unforeseen upsets will determine a team to go to the Crucible. Between Even in Death and Superstars, and Dread, this is a big blow for either of these teams, but especially so for our Superstars.
Yeah, when looking at Superstars and kind of the history of this team, there was at least a core 3 members of it, that being Srey, Faye, and Iacona. We find ourselves now without Faye, but with those 3, there was always a slow and steady decline when looking at the results that they had as a roster. Then in phase number 1, looking towards phase number 2, we know that they rid of Faye in order to kind of stop that slow and steady decline that they displayed. You know, try and stop the drowning that they have had going for them in the past. But it feels like once they rid of Faye, that it's almost kind of accelerated.
Right.
And now in week number 1, they against LagF, the most important match maybe of their lives to be able to fight out of it, other than here against Even in Death, they're willing to play without Srey, another one of those core 3. And so it's just the risk that they're willing to take. This up against Even in Death, this is a, you know, there are no more second chances for Superstars. They're out of those get out of jail free cards, and this is a must win. Otherwise, they will find themselves one series away from being knocked out of the HGC.
And for Even in Death, it has always been a race against time. Because they were a team that entered HGC not by defeating a team in the Crucible, but instead by replacing a team that disbanded, they've had a lot of pressure put onto them. And they've had to get used to a new competition format, a whole new level, skill level of competition, and they guys have been working tirelessly to try to get to that level and get out of the place they find themselves in now. But their time is up. It comes down to this series, and if they cannot defeat Superstars, then they will most likely find themselves once again in the Crucible, this time not as a challenger, but as a defender. So the stage is set. This match is ultra important for both of these teams. Let's get into it. It's Superstars versus Even in Death.
After our loss against Space Station, I know we were all pretty hungry because we were pretty upset that we lost to them, so we've been working way harder recently. And I feel like with Urho's inexperience in the offlane role, he doesn't take very efficient trades. And my hero pool compared to Urho's, we're both the splitters. I feel like my hero pool is a lot better when it comes to splitting and such. I feel like I can outplay him a lot of the times in lane, so I'd hope that we do well against Superstars. So I'm going to be trying a lot harder to improve. I know everyone on the team also feels that way and they want to improve more.
This week is a new patch, so we have been focusing on learning what the last balance patch did to the meta. One big thing is Oriole's Bursting Light got removed, so the first half of the draft is totally different now on a lot of maps. Iacona's hero pool is actually really diverse, and he plays pretty much every support at the top level. And so a lot of supports that were crutching on Uther and Oriole last patch basically won't be able to do that anymore, but that won't be a problem for our team because of Iacona's hero pool. Even in Death is obviously a must-win for us if we want to stay out of the Crucible and make it to playoffs. We beat them pretty handily last split. Hopefully we just do it again this one.
Hero pool's an important issue for both of the teams, as we got to hear from them. For Homicidal, he feels like he should be able to out-diversify over Erho, given that Erho hasn't been in his role for as long as Homicidal. But then Yoda talking about the supporting pool for Iacona, and Iacona's been supporting for just about as long as competitive Heroes of the Storm has existed, so it makes sense that he wouldn't be troubled too much by the Ariel and Uther changes.
I really do think that both of those are really outstanding points that both teams identify into those interviews, because I think that's accurate. When Even in Death looks the most dominant, it's when Homicidal's popping off. And to look at Urho as kind of the weak point within the roster of Superstars is a very, you know, kind of mature thought process to be going in for this series. But then on the other side, this is without a doubt the most affecting support patch we have had, maybe out of, you know, at least in part number 2 or phase number 2 completely. So to rely on Iacona's arsenal and the heroes that he has to be able to bust out, I think is really cool here for the members of Superstars. And something I think if anybody gets the edge there, I give it a little bit to Superstars because that support impact was so huge. Iacona's flexibility really is a great tool for them here.
I think it's going to end up, obviously, as we talk about the emotional impact for these teams, it's going to be a hard one for us to commentate this match because we do know how much has been invested for both of these teams. It's going to be a lot for the fans of these teams too to watch and see if they can find success in this match. So let's take a look at the top cheers for both of the teams. We're starting with Even in Death, though. We've got Quinn. Oh, that's pretty good. An Unsalted Pirate, an old friend, back again, and Gladman. And up next is Superstars.
The Unsalted Pirate every single time, man. On the side for Superstars here, though, we see we got Juna, XP, I'm going to go with that one. Little helper popping up left and right. King Tweaks at the very bottom. Sigmo, and I'm not even going to give an attempt at that one. Other than, I guess it is EU is Garbo, so now I'm going to say it. EU is Garbo.
I was like, how do you not want to say that one?
At first I saw it as use, like some kind of word that I didn't know how to pronounce, and Garbo, and I was like, but once I figured it all out, it was a pretty easy roll.
Dread, what does Garbo mean?
You know, I think it just means that they might be slightly inferior at right-clicking the core.
Oh.
I think that's what that might be suggesting. I don't mean to alarm anybody at home, but that may or may not be, in fact, what they're insinuating, that North America slightly better in that avenue.
Well, we're back to serious business now because it's time for this match, and it is an important one. First battleground of this best of 5, chosen by Even in Death. So it's no surprise that we're going to Sky Temple, bans on Cursed Hollow and Dragonshire.
The map selection for Sky Temple here and Even in Death, that is a really common choice for them early on. The team fighting capabilities this team has displayed, they have always been comfortable taking us there. And Superstars, when they have been at their best, it has been through macro play. So to start this off on the strengths of Superstars, their favorite map, Even in Death, and the weak point of Superstars, pretty big edge here for Even in Death on game 1.
Now, Dread, last week we saw a lot of focus for Globals Even in Death, even more so than just the Dahaka that they had been prioritizing throughout part 1 of phase 2, bringing in things like Dahaka and Abathur. But that did set them in a way, as we see Abathur getting banned, where they were behind in the early game. How will that come into play versus Superstars?
I mean, I would normally say that is going to be a major fear point, but Superstars is not a team that typically pushes the envelope very thoroughly. I would say, maybe a lesser version of Tempo Storm, a team that can find themselves with an advantage, but maybe questioning how far that they can push that there. And so a team like Even in Death may get a couple of second chances into a map that they traditionally wouldn't against a more formidable opponent, which I feel is something that Even in Death has to be comfortable to rely on here in this series and would give them a really large upper hand.
Yeah, I kind of was thinking along those same lines. I do feel like Superstars, their best chance of the way that they make decisions and make decisions quickly is to make sure that they are ahead in the early game, because then it transitions well into the mid game for them, whereas if they get behind, they sometimes have a hard time figuring out when exactly they need to make a play to come back. But that does seem to have changed a lot now with their rotation of shot callers. They had Airhost starting to shot call, Stray did it briefly, and now we've got Yoda shot calling. And with Yoda comes more aggression, sometimes even some over-aggression from him. He's playing from a new role, the primary range, and so that can be a difficult place to shot call from, but it's brought some aggression to the team.
With the high Rhaegar of Even in Death, with their 1-2 being that Greymane and Rhaegar, this does play towards their strengths a little bit. With the Dahaka picked up, we have to be considering the Illidan for Homicidal. That has been a go-to pick for them, even with the nerfs. I think that they were one of the few teams that I assumed that Illidan's still going to be there. It was before it was, they were the hipster Illidan before it was cool. They're going to be after it's cool. So that is still something to be considering for Even in Death, which may be part of the reason we see Superstars comfortable picking that high Arthas before the secondary ban phase. Flat out, totally decentivizing them pick into the Illidan here.
But Even in Death are sort of going back to their roots before they went very global focus last weekend, which is an adjustment into heavy melee and death volley type compositions. They were doing that quite a bit toward the end of part 1. We'll see how far they continue down that rabbit hole, especially now that, as you said, Arthas has been picked up. Even in Death considering an Uther ban. Superstars likely not going to be too worried, though. It's more about, not necessarily what can we make Iacona uncomfortable on, and more just about what support does Iacona play that we don't want to deal with. And they're switching that out to Stukov.
One thing I am concerned with on the side of Superstars has got to be that Vala pickup for them. Vala, has died out in terms of priority pretty consistently, outside of having somebody who can maybe hold her own outside of a void with like a Q build Vala, having that 13 self-heal. Other than that, she hasn't accented the Ariel hyper carry strategy very thoroughly. She doesn't really do anything that I can see the justification before the secondary ban phase here for Superstars. Not saying that they can't make that recovery throughout their 4-5, but I am very much looking for some form of justification here, because right now it just feels a bit outdated with that level of priority.
Yeah, it was a hero that Yoda was playing a bit in their last series versus Lag Force, so it may just be with another role swap. Obviously, Yoda has played some ranged before. He was playing a sort of pseudo role when he was on roll 20 and would play something like Li Ming. But I also wonder how much of this maybe was a way of trying to deny some heroes from Even in Death. Even in Death loved Vala and double support potentially for a while. We still saw some double support in Europe, so it is maybe a factor from that too.
That's a really good point that you bring up, essentially removing one of the two major and key playstyles that Even in Death has kind of gained an identity for. It's either the double support or it's the Illidan Death Ball, but it doesn't look like it's going to be Illidan this time. You know, actually, now that I say that, I feel like Even in Death's a team that's willing to run both at the same time, but we do have the Malthael online here for Sky Temple. It's been rising more and more in North America. We asked Goku yesterday, and he immediately just got a smirk on his face. He's like, yeah, the Malthael's here to stay.
Yeah. It's been working out for a lot of teams. And we had a lot of teams wanting to start running him even before we had the break between parts. And Even in Death was one of them. Homicidal. I remember a lot of Malthael plays from him with Tormented Souls. So expect this to be scary. Also a nice solid frontliner of Johanna. We have seen Falling Sword once from Even in Death. Any chances we get that here today? I think it was even Falling Sword and Bloodlust.
Yeah, right
at the
now,
same time.
I feel like I have to see all 5 heroes selected before I can say that, but I wouldn't put it past. So I do have enough tools to be able to, I can see the justification for it, and there's enough on the other side. It depends how many poor defenses are selected here for that Vala, and the Medivh alone looks like a big enough indicator for me to say probably not going to be the Falling Sword any longer.
Right.
But let's say the Medivh was off the table. I think that's actually a pretty realistic direction to go because, again, Vala's lack of survivability and maybe not having enough defenses, a Falling Sword plus a Malthael usually is going to be a dead Vala.
Medivh continuing to rise through the ranks of both regions. A lot of play in Europe now, and a lot of play from Superstars versus Lagforce. Lagforce has been playing him a lot too, and even Tempo Storm picking up Medivh more in their series yesterday versus Galeforce.
It's been rising and climbing, and I don't see a point where it stops. Honestly, up until first pick, first ban, every map, every team, that is when I'll be like, I think he has found his home, Gilly. Last pick still here for Even in Death. Again, I wouldn't put it past him to go into another melee assassin, but let's just assume that they're not going to. What stands out here for Even in Death?
What about, I would have said Genji. They love playing Genji, but Falstad, they're still going to make sure that they have a global hero for Sky Temple.
And it's going to be pretty effective as well into, the Medivh and then the Arthas on the other side, having a Gust to be able to remove one of the optimal initiations out of that duo here. But the Falstad, a lot of the picks on the side of Even in Death here, they don't necessarily synergize that well with one another. They're just kind of, tier 2, I think, of their role is the best way to describe it for a lot of it. So it does feel like it lacks a bit of oomph I was hoping for game 1.
It has felt the same way about Even in Death last weekend in the series they played too, the way that they were drafting. And it almost seems like Even in Death is trying to be more on the responsive side of drafting than trying to go in with a game plan and having what is going to fit their composition the best. Things like playing Leoric into one of Galeforce Esports' strategy when they had the Garrosh, right? Is a ways of trying to make sure that they could counter the composition. It's just whether or not they go too far in the countering and then don't have a composition that synergizes well together within their comp.
Essentially that the counter has to be a direct counter. It cannot be a soft counter because at that point you lack so much in synergy that you need more than just the, well, my hero beats your hero and across the board, right? Because it just fails to be that well-rounded composition. And it does seem to be still lacking a little bit here. The Malthael plus the Johanna mixed with the Falstad pickup, all kind of lackluster back and forth. But, if one big mistake or cooldown is mistimed by Superstars, that Falstad pick for Even in Death, one huge gust could be the beginning of the end of one major skirmish. So
yeah, I'm expecting maybe that we see some more aggressive gusts into making sure that you have Tormented Souls, just because Johanna is sort of hard without Falling Sword to make sure that you can start engagements. So that's another option for Even in Death to be able to start engagements too, besides the fact of trying to stop if Arthas gets onto some of the members, if Medivh gets a good leyline CO, making sure that Malfurion can't follow up with the Great Twilight Dream after.
Superstars here is going to have a very aggressive early game. All stages of the game, really, for them is a perfect time to be able to get the focus. No major power spike for either side. I do feel like we can assume, even in Death, due to that lack of synergy, that means that their kits don't work default with, they don't synergize that well when they have 4 spells. When they have 3, it's even less synergistic, which that means traditionally you can assume those style compositions will not be aggressive level 1 through 9 because they have even less, likelihood to succeed.
Well, let's get into game number 1, a match with Crucible implications in a best of 5 between Superstars and Even in Death.
And we're going to be kicking off here with Even in Death. Battery is going to be on Johanna. We have Lutano representing on Falstead. Hao is going to be the Rhaegar. Frozen X on Greymane. And we have Homicidal on Malthael.
And in the red, the members of Superstars, Daihu, sub-player, Warrior playing Arthas. Hosty will be playing his Medivh. Yoda playing that Vala. Up next, Iacona playing Malfurion. And finally, Erho will be playing Dahaka. And something in the draft made me think we're going to have Hungering Arrow build for Vala. There's just something about it, maybe so that she can make sure that she's keeping up as a merking hero. There's not really any traditional mercenary heroes. Maybe you could send Dahaka, but you want to have Dahaka out in the lane, whereas even in Death, they have Greymane, they have Rhaegar, these good heroes to try to go take mercenary camps quickly. So that'll be able to help with that, as well as a potential 1v1 if she gets Greymane diving on top of her. Maybe even a Malthael trying to chunk down the health bar and dissuade them from coming after her.
Yeah, it is, kind of still a bit curious for me, I feel like, but I am much more happy to see Superstars willing to pick that kind of uncommon Vala before the secondary ban phase without much of a major argument, and then still see them willing to go into the Q build here. But Homicidal after that drag, luckily he's got a bit of support here. Nothing's going to go down yet, but Erho with that prediction. Homicidal was comfortable talking about his confidence in this 1v1, but first, trade here going over to Erho.
Yeah, and actually, we're going to see both of the characters moving back and forth between the mid and the bot, along with having Hosty in that Medivh. So Even in Death are doing their best to make sure to counter the early aggression that you predicted from Superstars up in the top lane. Superstars doing what they can to take down some of the structures there, the towers, the gate. And if we see them move in toward the top temple, it's a way for them to try to guarantee and get an early fort, set them ahead of Even in Death in the structures as well as the experience as we head into heroic abilities and the second temple phase.
And due to the lack of offense, we can assume Even in Death will display levels 1 through 9. That means that it is very important that they are time sensitive with capturing that middle shrine, which they have done so even slightly before that of Superstars here up in the northern shrine. That is a must-have if they are to go blow for blow and be on even footing as they round out their heroics.
Even in Death have transitioned Lutano, the global, to come down to the bottom. Not as able to put the damage on to a Dahaka as Malthael is. I'm seeing Malthael step off of the shrine, maybe looking like he wanted to come down in, but we still have Johanna from Even in Death to be there in the mid. And so Falstad has been pushed back.
There's actually something to note when looking at those 1v1s about the Falstad we were just talking about, and going with the shielding at level 4 rather than going with the hammer gains auto attack sustain. So this does increase the likelihood of getting dove onto Lutano. Like if the Arthas is diving him, he can hold his own for a couple of seconds as long as, he has his barrel roll coming off cooldown in a few. But he is going to struggle into the 1v1. You no longer have the auto attack self-sustain onto the minions, which keep you above the 80 and 90% threshold, which means you are no longer vulnerable to the gank. So Lutano has to be a bit more passive here into the laning phase now.
Superstars doing a little bit of a Superstars classic by immediately going down and getting the Giants as soon as the first temple phase is done. We'll see if they follow that up with stealing the Giants away from Even in Death's side. They love to do that. I did think that that was more of a characterization of having Erho shot call, but it does seem like they are continuing to run with that trend.
Yeah, that the offense here, timing, not so much around the bottom shrine like some areas of the world are willing to do. Specifically, always think of L5 when talking about Sky Temple strategies between first and second altar, but still showing some level of offense here. I think it's really cool to see that coming out from Superstars. I think a lot of the teams, especially and in that Crucible range in North America, kind of suffered at being able to identify when to push the when to push the envelope, when to force their hand. And Superstars is always comfortable doing that on a map like Sky.
The problem for them now, though, is they had to send a bunch of people up to the top lane, and with those great merking heroes, Even in Death easily and quickly got their own Giants, and now are applying a lot of damage to the front wall of Superstars down there in the bottom lane. The Bruisers have been captured. This should go very well with Dahaka as they get set up for the next Shrine Phase 2. As long as they can keep Dahaka with those Bruisers, it gets them closer and closer to taking out that fort that they've been working towards since the very beginning of the game.
Yeah, they've done a very effective job here, but we've got 10 seconds before the bottom and second shrine phase comes online. We have 3 members of Even and Death poking around down here, but the Johanna still controlling the eye up on the top half of the map. They're going for a gank here, but that is Urho, a Dahaka, unlikely to get a gank onto that, which means Superstars is going to be comfortable consuming the first couple of shots on bottom.
Maybe it just is that Even and Death were way more concerned with keeping that fort alive in the top. So they're willing to give up the initial shots, especially because, again, they did take out some of the towers in front of Superstar's fort. But now the temple is fighting behind that. It's already taken out the well, and it's starting to work on the fort. Even Death would love to step on into the shrine, but they still don't have Johanna here just yet. They're going to keep Falstad along with Dahaka, make sure that he is in flight range, and now they'll move in.
Now they're going to get more aggressive here. Daihu for now using the Frozen Tempest, getting the slow as he stalls out those last 2 shots and the burst on the shrine. Lutano, though, making his way down. Hao got rooted. Urho with the brush stock, unable to connect with the drag. Portal's used. Hosie's in. He's out, but the W here for Lutano is there. Force of Will using that. Now we find ourselves with nobody going down. Just a slugfest. Good root coming out from Iacona. Leads to first blood.
I really thought Homicidal would be the first one to get taken out in that, but he played patiently and kind of abused the vision, and with the pressure that Even and Death were putting on into the back of Superstars, Daihu had to move back and make sure that he was peeling for him. But the great root was enough to take out Battery, giving them first blood and letting Superstars get the rest of the shots and take out the bottom fort.
Even and Death has to be a bit concerned with the fact that they are already down half that turret, or half the fort up on top, and losing the entire fort down below. Yes, they have managed to keep themselves even when looking at the experience, but the structure loss in separation here is something that might come back to haunt them. But we are rounding out the heroics. Poorly used here from Urho as he gets past movement speed. Good dodge coming out from Frozen X. The only reason he survived is you saw Daihu sharking on the side there on that Arthas.
Yeah, it's something I'm wondering about now. That rotation to go up to the top and deal with the bruisers set Even and Death so that it took them so long to be able to run down to the bottom, and Superstars quickly getting there, now catching Battery, who has already used Blessed Shield, already used everything that Johanna possibly has to get away, and all of Superstars will claim another kill from Even and Death.
Even and Death does have their heroics now, and we expected that they would be a bit more passive and struggling at the early stages of this game. But it's to keep in mind that by no means, now that they have the heroics, does this suddenly swing this to a power spike and a major advantage for Even and Death. Superstars has a terrifying post-10 teamfight composition as well. They're going to even start the boss here, knowing that 2 members of Even and Death up on top. Only one of them, in fact, have the global.
Yeah.
Posty revealing with his 4.
Realizing that Greymane is the big deal. It's up there. And then seeing that the bruisers were taken, they feel very confident sitting on here. They've got Hosty up in the front. He has Leyline Seal, so that's a great tool for boss control, even as Gust is for Even and Death. The Superstars will get the first boss of the game. Tano barrel rolls out of a sticky situation with those roots.
But we have the altars up here, and with the members of Even and Death forced to respond here to this boss is going to lead to a lot of free shots taken up on the bottom half of the map. That's going to lead to a lot of damage into that middle fort. It is very crucial that Even and Death finds a way to stop both of these altars from being captured by Superstars, and it feels like that has to happen before the 13 window. They agree. It seems like they're trying now to force desperately through mid, but because they walked past the minions, it was a very easily, avoided gank by the members of Superstars, and why we see them transitioning towards top.
Yeah, it also helps when you have a bird just floating above you, like, hey, don't mind me, I'm just letting my entire team know where you're at all times. It's fine. Very frustrating is it having a Hosty and Medivh floating over you like that. But Even in Death, they're setting up in a way that they have Falstad on the bottom temple. It was more important that they try to get to the top one since a lot of this temple had already been taken. Arrow comes in, catches Lutano with the drag, kills Falstad, getting the last burst of shots from the bottom temple. We'll see if he stalks on up next.
Aggressing here. He
He's
dropped
coming
the
in.
first rain. Brush stock there after the leyline seal. Drag does not end up landing. Iacona does not get the Twilight Dream. It's interrupted by the Blessed Shield. It looks like that is too much pressure, though, for Homicidal to be able to hold his own. He's the first to fall, but surely not the last here for Even and Death. His Battery stalls it out 3 for nothing for Superstars.
Great positioning by Daihu to get on top of those members. Even though, yes, the Blessed Shield came out immediately and stopped Twilight Dream, there was no way anyone was going to get out of Daihu's Frozen Tempest. And with those 2 kills, the rest of the temple drained of shots by Superstars, and they are just getting further and further ahead in this game as those shots take out the mid fort, the final fort remaining for Even in Death. Superstars with their 13, they're not so far ahead. Even in Death are hoping that they can get to 13 for a fight, but just as that happens, they lose their Rhaegar.
And the portal is going to allow a lot of the members of Superstars to just walk out freely. They're even going to go back in. They still have a Twilight Dream if they need it. Keep in mind, a lot of cooldowns available for the members of Superstars, but the Cursed Bullet, the Flask, is a big enough deterrent. Lutano flanking around on the side. He gets dragged right on in. Bird is going to go down. Superstars here angry 7-0 when looking at these kills as they're about to round their 16 talent here over Even in Death.
And it was all the way until the bottom temple phase that we had the first blood. So it seems like as soon as Superstars got that first kill, they got the momentum going. And things are sort of falling apart for Even in Death on their favorite battleground. Stagger death after stagger death. It's only game 1 in this series. It's by no means over, but it would be fairly devastating to them to lose so handily to Superstars on Sky Temple, the one battleground where they have a pretty good record, a record that's not losing, in fact.
At first glance, that high Vala pick, you know, it did seem a bit out of place, but again, with the thought process transitioning into the Q build here, I'm not saying whether or not it's right or wrong. The thing here that proves to me is Superstars have put a lot of thought into this series. They have prepared themselves for Even in Death, understanding the gravity of it. Even Yoda referring to the fact that this is their must-win. And so I feel like Even in Death is suddenly realizing that Superstars here they're here to play, that they are not taking this lightly. And it's just whether or not we are going to find a situation where Even in Death can understand the pressure being displayed by Superstars and find a solution for it, because right now they don't. The Gust is going to be used. It seems like the first attempt portal is going to allow Daihu to be able to escape the ley line, freezing the members, but a Twilight goes down.
Twilight Dream goes down. Daihu fairly low. It still hasn't been claimed. Iacona has to bail out through the portal, but Arrow steps onto the point, even as Daihu already was down and out. Force of Will saves Yoda, but only for now. Homicidal keeping right on top of that Vala, and they'll get the kill. 2 kills for Even in Death. Superstars step too far forward, trying to steal the Bruiser camp.
Homicidal still has one more W in a few seconds, but a portal is enough to be able to push Superstars on out. Urho goes through the shrub, gets the mobility, but it doesn't look like he wants to move in any farther. Even in Death forced that fight down 2 whole levels, and more importantly, a 16 talent tier. And they found themselves some success. The first 2 kills of the game, and now a couple of shots. They are still far behind, not even on the same talent tier, but if they can keep up this momentum, maybe they can make Superstars at least second guess themselves in the decision making, because they have been in full control for the first 12 minutes.
You know, that reminds me of another time Superstars tried to invade a Bruiser camp with a Medivh. That time had a Dragon Knight, and it also did not go super well for the Superstars, but Superstars still have a massive structural advantage. The best thing going for Even in Death is they finally have 16, thanks to those couple of kills, and they haven't lost a keep yet. Boss will be available. Temple slowly losing its shots, taking it down. Lutano is there. Reign of Vengeance. Barrel roll in.
He has no more Q. That is going to be a kill.
Kona!
He's got it. No way. The Gust, the minions are truly the real MVP here. They walk away feeling very proud. Mission accomplished.
They should, but Kona should feel prouder. That root catching him in. 1 Moonfire, he gets gusted away. It's got to feel so good to force a gust and then still be able to get the kill thanks to your minion friends. And that's why you're always nice to your minions, everybody.
That, in fact, is why you make sure to, you know, every day let them know that they are truly the only reason that the battle can happen here on a map like Sky Temple.
Just give them a quick shout out.
Yeah, you know, minions, you know,
we're here for you.
We're here for you. The only way that could have gotten better is maybe ice blocking the Gust just to really, you know, kind of... But why would you raise the cooldown? He obviously did the math here. I know Iacona's a bright young lad. But Even in Death here, we got to keep in mind the fact that this is by no means even footing for them. They're still got quite a bit to be able to recover. The forts all falling, though, is very convenient for themselves. The double camp up on bottom, something Superstars has to be afraid of, but They have a Vala, and more importantly, the Medivh to be able to portal and move past if Even in Death gets a bit too greedy.
Dread, what do you think of this Rising Storm pick for support for the Rhaegar of Even in Death?
Without having a major, hero to be able to stay on top of the members of Superstars effectively for long periods of time, I don't necessarily know if I can agree with it.
Is Malthael not enough time?
How many times have we seen Malthael even use Tormented Souls and get value on its own?
Just the Bruiser camp?
And even then, I don't know if the word... that was full value.
Yeah.
You could get away with it there. So only in that one case, which again, it felt like a bit more greed on the side of Superstars than a play of Even in Death. But talking about maybe greed on the side of Superstars, this boss up on bottom, it's been scouted for both sides. Nobody wants to touch it.
Especially with Temples activating in 24 seconds, losing a whole bunch of members right now would basically equal a loss. If you gave both Temples up, you're going to be losing keeps. That is a nightmare scenario for either team, but it's still Even in Death who are behind in experience.
10 seconds away, and if Superstars or Even in Death just wipe even a few members, that is enough to set at least a keep behind. And on Sky Temple, being a keep behind with the experience going to be gained throughout that is not a circumstance these teams can afford. First couple of shots up through mid, Even in Death can claim them for themselves.
Superstars starting to move in. They want to take the fight over just trading out on the shrines.
Falset has to be careful. He actually barrel rolled away from the Dahaka, who's coming through on the bottom left-hand side of your screen. A major cooldown not to have for a team fight. Urho posturing.
Guy who is way far in with a lot of the members of Even in Death using Army of the Dead. Tormented Souls is out, and it's already down.
Inevitable End and Cleanse were both used on the side of Even in Death. Urho able to brush stock himself on out. He's going to be fine. Goes back to the same corner. Drag is going to be used.
Homicidal. Ancestral Healing just barely doesn't connect with all the damage there. They lose the Malthael, but they're still trying to make a fight happen if they can. The Twilight Dream follow-up after Leyline Seals. Destruction for Greymane. And Even in Death must concede the fight.
3 members of Even in Death have now fallen. Superstars are going to march their way right on down to this boss. They have still a lot of shots through mid. Urho's going to do his best to get those on through. They have the 20 talent here and still shots up on bottom. This is without a doubt going to be a minimum of 1 keep. It's just how many keeps does Even in Death lose? Or does Superstars want more? They have a chance to be able to move into the core. But again, this is one of those cases of how far do Superstars push their lead. On a map like Sky, it makes sense to play slow.
Yeah, there's 40 seconds, 35 now for Leyline Seal as a means of disengaging if they chose to push along with the boss in the Death Bridge. They're using Vala with that great Murking build, Monster Hunter, to get one of the giant cams, and then the rest take the next one. So they've got 4 giants, plus a boss, plus 20. That is a math sign, or a math equation for success for Superstars to try to get a keep off of this. And they still have Dahaka up in the top lane, ready to brush stock in if he's called to the fight. Which is now.
The boss making its way to the keep. No portal thrown down yet. That's the biggest indicator of an initiation. Lutano already forced to use the barrel roll, and that's an Iron Skin drop there for Battery in the front line. Boss falls below, and it looks like Superstars is okay with just 1 keep. There's still over half the shots up on the top altar, but Even in Death will get 20 in that amount of time. They will be able to contest these shots. That's something that Superstars cannot be too happy with. If they were to go bottom to confirm that keep, I feel like somebody could have been up on top making sure these shots were being taken.
Well,
so
yeah, it was a little bit weird. They committed the Dahaka down in, which made it seem like they were trying to end the game. If they had been able to hit that drag, they did force Iron Skin, they did force barrel roll, but nothing more than that. So it just didn't pan out for them. They took the risk, didn't pay off there. Now they have to win one more fight, one more decisive fight, and then they can head back in and try to finish out the game.
But with 20s, Even in Death is going to go in. That's already the Medivh cheats being used. Dai who goes through the portal, Army of the Dead. The members of Even in Death so clumped up. The Gust and the Twilight Dream are used, and Urho's making havoc on the backline. Tormented Souls here from Homicidal ripping through, but he is falling so very low. The blind for Battery, but is not going to gain too much value. Portal and Superstars is out.
Going into a corner sort of worked out for Even in Death in that situation. Homicidal was able to keep himself alive. They had the Ancestral to make sure that Lutano stayed alive. But at the same time, Even in Death didn't get any kills. They just survived the onslaught of Superstars. They still have the keep down, the 1 keep to the 3 of Superstars, but they're still in this game, and they have plenty of chances for another fight, the next fight that might help them be able to even up the structural disadvantage.
Even in Death was able to keep and hold their own into that last fight, the only fight. It's just whether or not this is too late for them to find themselves into that situation in this game, being down that entire keep throughout bottom. Because we know that teams that oftentimes do fail to push their lead appropriately oftentimes do give up these multiple skirmishes at the later stages. But again, you want to make that happen before the keep goes down, before you're worried about the catapult pressure at some angle of the map. Even more so if you fail to have a global advantage, which is the case for Even in Death in this game.
They have their false dad, and they have a big mount. Do we have Apex Predator? Where's that? No, we've Contagion for Dahaka. And now it's a waiting game. Even in Death are rotating around, responding to the mercenary camp of Superstars, making sure that they don't lose out on that next keep, which is fairly low. In seeing this positioning, Superstars can go in, take away the Giants from Even in Death, step back and get their own. That's a massive push that requires Even in Death to then rotate down, and the entire time, the bird is the word in making sure that he's keeping an eye on Even in Death for Superstars.
We find ourselves a minute and 20 seconds away from the boss and 25 away from these 2 shrines onto the top half of the map. So quite a bit of overlap there between them, and we'll see if anybody wants to make that contesting down below and try and fight over the boss. Another thing we have to consider over this fight that is going to unfold is who controls vision. The fight over mid allows for such a very easy flank over top. You see left and right around the eye between this mid and top. If you fail to possess that, you almost always lose a skirmish around this mid shrine.
Really cool from Superstars. They knew that all of Even in Death had to deal with the Giants, so they got a chance to figure out where exactly was more important for them for temples, and they got the eye. They kept Daihu on the shrine to slow things down, but the whole time top has been their focus because that keep was already low. They've taken out that keep now. Now the temple they have is working on the secondary, the final keep that remains for Even in Death.
Lutano might look for an epic flight and a gust here. That's a chokehold where the members of Even in Death might want to fight. Instead, he's going to make it through mid. Finds himself in Urho, or maybe Urho found him, because that's the drag use. The gust force housed in a bad spot. The members of Even in Death getting a flank on Superstars. Twilight Dream is used, only hitting 2 of the members of Even in Death, so they are fine. Once again, a portal used. Superstars goes right on through, escapes the fight, but they find themselves afraid to trade with Even in Death.
They're going to move back on in. They've used Twilight Dream and Army, but they still have Leyline Seal. Airho throws out Isolation, but it misses. The drag does not. Cleanse must be used. Maybe had been his inevitable end, but either way, he makes it out of the root. Leyline Seal
being forced, even using the back end there with the curve. Mid-keep almost down for Superstars as Even in Death gets their very own in this game. The flight up towards top from Homicidal is going to be able to make sure that Even in Death gets these top shots. Yoda goes in for the 1v1 here with the Greymane, even the root thrown out from Iacona. Superstars wants to take this fight. They're doing their best. Dahaka coming in with a brush stock.
No gust just yet. It's just now ready, and it's probably going to be necessary as he throws it out to allow Even in Death to retreat. 1 temple left with just a few shots. A boss maybe as an availability, but there's a lot of minions brewing in the bottom lane, and Even in Death had to go back to clear it out, which is the end of the remaining keep for Even in Death. No structures, except for the core.
It's all about this boss. When looking at boss control, we have Indestructible, pretty effective. Falstad's Gust, obviously amazing, but we have 25 seconds away from that coming up. Army of the Dead is pretty useful, along with Twilight Dream, any AoE, Isolation from the Dahaka, the Leyline Seal, Rain of Vengeance. Every heroic Superstars has is something that you can claim. If it's not good, it's decent. So Superstars is expecting the boss to be started. They're just going to go ahead and march on in. They want this core. 9 seconds for Gust, and then back away once the backing happens from Even in Death.
Yeah, Hosty realized, or was able to show that everybody from Even in Death had already started
Look
on the boss.
That's
Homicidal
huge.
catches 4 members, and Hosty is not here yet to slow
The
down.
flight
Comes
Iacona!
in. Iacona
He's
Ice Block.
split! He's on his own! He has no defensive! He gets gusted! The Blessed Shield! Iacona on an island, and he goes down!
Leyline Seal can't save Malfurion from his fate. 60 seconds until he will be back up the core, taking permanent damage as Lutano finally gets back and stops the catapults. That's the problem now. Even in Death have no keeps left. They are under so much siege now that we're 24 minutes into this game. It's at 77%. And with Falstad still at the base, all of the members of Superstars, even without Malfurion, are going back in for the boss.
It's at half HP already. Army of the Dead popped. Urho is doing his best to keep pressure. No ley line seal available. No Gust for 22. Lutano's making his way in. The boss is going to go down, and even in Death, claim it for themselves. Superstars is now on full panic, full retreat, because Urho's not even out safely yet.
Oh man, there's just the singular temple that's going to activate a boss, but it keeps still in the mix in that bottom lane for Superstars. Even in Death, getting more mercenary camps for this possible Death push. Falstad's still in the base, making sure that nobody's going to come in and backdoor.
Even in Death, not willing to push with a 23-minute boss with the scaling. They're comfortable trading shots, even being down 3 entire keeps. This is mind-boggling. They are taking so many risks, assuming Superstars is willing to take that fight, but maybe they're assuming that Superstars has been afraid of every skirmish to where they're comfortable with this, that they think this is the best opportunity for themselves. They're gonna have to prove it. Superstars aggressive here towards the bottom shrine.
That they are. Falstad still up in the top, goes back to the base, wanting to clear out that bottom lane to make sure that those waves have been pushed back far enough that they don't have to worry about it as they get ready for what likely will be the final fight around this temple. But Superstars aren't stepping forward. A lot of these shots have already been taken, and Superstars themselves now find themselves getting shots on their final keep.
They are losing that top keep 100%. And we find 26 minutes in, a keepless game.
On Sky.
We have no boss for another, what, has to be 2 minutes, 3 minutes and 27 seconds. It's all about whoever makes the rotation to core first. So whoever pressures the minions and has vision is going to gain a huge upper hand over the next shrine advantage. And Gilly, we talked about it before. You want to know who's really, really good with that game called Vision? It's your boy Medivh in that Raven form. Hosty will always be able to show if Even in Death wants to backdoor or anything of the like. And if Superstars goes for the core, Medivh's the best delayer.
Yep.
He has Leyline Seal, Medivh cheats. Everything is set up for Superstars to backdoor the core. Even in Death has to be aware of this. If they fail to do so, that 77% might fall to 0 real quick.
Catapults pushing against catapults. Medivh keeping vision of it all on Even in Death. To wait for the last temple phase.
Nobody wants to cross the halfway line. Vision seems to be the focus for a moment. Battery eats the Howling Blast, throws out the blind. Superstars retreating once more.
Full retreat, no mercenary camps, nothing to fight over.
It's all about whoever has the minion wave pushed out. Vision controlled by Even in Death
Just
right now.
Just one temple.
Huge advantage for Even in Death, but controlling the vision, only having one shrine over this in through the mid lane. But again, it's who can backdoor the core. That has got to be something going through both these teams' minds right now. Is this really worth committing?
Falstad! Hosty and Airho found Falstad!
Down a member. Even in Death has to force something. They've got to do something crazy here. The catapult's on top. There's only one. They're going to take this 5 versus 4.
They have to. They have to fight in this now. They have to fight over the temple.
And they're going to go.
Homicidal getting on top of a lot of members of Superstars, but the portal saves them all.
Tormented Soul is being deterred from one portal from the Medivh. Army of the Dead coming out from Daihu. Urho getting the drag in the back like Twilight Dream used from Iaconi, hitting so many members.
Indestructible.
He is going to keep Battery alive for a second, and there's the ley line.
Ley line catches everybody still in existence. That Indestructible is all but spent from Battery, but he's still fairly healed up.
They're
Somehow,
not dying.
Even in Death, they're staying in this thanks to the self-heals, thanks to the healing of Hao. But there is no Ancestral left to keep him alive if somebody starts to get chunked, and that happens to be Homicidal.
He's gonna fall here. Another member for Even in Death dies, but 7 more seconds before Lutano's gonna join, and that is a global with a Gust. They lose the Greymane. The Moonfur burn is enough for that kill. They get another, and it looks like Superstars, the Gust, the Flight, it just seems to be delaying the inevitable.
Kona went into the base. Homicidal and Lutano are there, but all he's doing is making sure that he's buying some time for the escape. Daihu is very low. Johanna is pushing Airho off with the shots.
These shots end the game. Urho and now the members of Superstars, they're coming back. Daiku, one shot. Lutano's ready to battle.
Battery's
they get
down.
the Johanna.
Battery's down. Force of Will saves Arthas, but at least Lutana can get Dahaka. It's 2 versus the world of Superstars right now.
Homicidal ends up going down again. 80 more seconds to where he will be dead. And with the final kill on Lutano, Superstars will claim Sky Temple in game 1 over Even in Death.
That was nearly a 30-minute Sky Temple game. No keeps, 1 temple, ultimate brawl fest. What a game.
What a game that was. What did we experience? The minute Even Death got that bottom boss and was unwilling to push with that, I was just like, I have no idea how this is going to end. How can Even in Death even hold on to that game? That was a miracle fight at the end. That was 20 versus 20. It felt like a minute and a half long fight, and they still held their own, 4 versus 5, for a large majority of it. Falstad died, almost came back to life to fight in that fight once more.
Yeah, he made it back, but it was after they had lost Johanna, and so then they were always fighting with a man down in all of that final fight. So difficult to lose Falstad there, but I want to highlight Erho. Erho made a ton of plays on his Dahaka. He found Falstad multiple times, and then knowing where Hosty was, Hosty always making sure that if he's not keeping track of all the members, he's finding places for those opportunities to happen. And for all of the sort of call-outs that Homicidal had for Erho, I think he proved that he's doing a pretty good job in his role.
At least with the short amount of time that he has been given, he is putting up a damn good fight so far.
Yep.
That was very well done there from Erho. All the members of Superstars, I'm still more impressed with Even in Death, whether it be just their failure to give up in that game. I don't know what it was, but that last skirmish was something that I feel like you could write down as a legend in Heroes of the Storm competitively. The day that they fought the fight, no man had the confidence to take. They took it, and more importantly, they didn't even look bad doing it.
No, they didn't. My only hope is that they won't let this get to them, because it's a disheartening loss, but even still, that was an amazing fight, and they nearly made it happen. They were already behind, and they made lots of right moves to come back into the game. Let's take a look at 2 of the players closely in this match. We're talking about Lutano versus Yoda. Yoda just now moving into this more ranged primarily role, so it may be a little bit different when we look at the stats. But Dread, does anything immediately stand out to you from the stats?
Not really. These guys are pretty close overall when looking at, the effectiveness of themselves within the game. Again, they did play slightly different roles. Yoda pulling ahead in a couple of things, specifically the KDA. But at the end of the day, these 2 are pretty evenly matched.
They are very close. Lutano is one of the... Well, I mean, really, we've been impressed with all of the members of Even in Death, but Lutano was one that we immediately were wowed by, as well as Homicidal. And then Yoda. Yoda has come in and been able to make a lot of developments, a lot of changes for Superstars just by his mere presence being there. You think about it, and the length of time that a lot of these members have been on Superstars, to have Yoda come in and within a few weeks be able to start shot calling for the team shows that they have a lot of trust in him and his ability to succeed, and he has proven that he deserves that trust.
And I feel like, if anything, it also shows just the growth of Yoda because
Definitely.
he's also not played competitively like a lot of people before HGC. That was kind of his breakthrough. So
That's
he's
so true.
come in, changed rosters, gained enough respect to lead over what would be considered a roster full of veterans. That is impressive.
That is very impressive. And they're up 1 game in the series.